I believe at the beginning it was really well-intentioned, but it was actually that Unilever comment, which was, for me, is that watershed moment where the second they took brand purpose as a profit driver, that was where it went wrong. Because that was when you started, also boardrooms then started expecting if the purpose needs to drive profit.
Yeah.
And the thing is with purpose isn't purpose unless it costs you something.
Hello and welcome to Your CMO Mentor, the podcast where we take some of the brightest minds in our industry and we ask them questions as if we were asking them to mentor you and the rest of the community at large. In today's episode, we have someone absolutely incredible. We have Bronwen Foster-Butler, who is the CMO over at Finisterre. Finisterre is a apparel and clothing brand, but with purpose built truly in the heart of the business. And Bronwen, as the CMO, really holds the torch for that mission, imbuing it in both the product, but also the marketing and making sure that everything lines up to be a fantastic business. Now, the interesting thing about Bronwen is that Bronwen is not like an idealist who sort of with her heads in the clouds and sort of going, let's do purpose. Bronwen is fully aware of both the industry chatter around purpose, but also around what it really means to build a business around purpose. Now, a lot of us as marketers, we don't operate in silos. We don't walk into our jobs and suddenly forget that we're human beings. And so to do more for the planet and do more for social good are things that I think generally people think are good things to do. But actually matching the how to do that becomes quite tricky when we've got short-term demands on ROI or results or whatever they may be. And so Bronwen in this session just delivers a really practical view on what purpose looks like today and how to create marketing around purpose without losing that commercial focus. Bronwen is not only a fantastic commercial leader, but she's just someone who fills a room with soul and happiness and competence and just is one of those people you want to spend more time around if you could. I don't think you could ever get enough of being around Bronwen. So hopefully in this chat you get both the purpose stuff, but you get a few giggles along the way. I know that James and I did. And with all that said, let's head into the episode itself.
Yeah. Okay, quick sponsor read by a brilliant company called Weglot, who are going to help you internationalize your business. How do they do that, Joe?
So if you've ever landed on a website and it's in another language and you don't know what's going on, then Weglot is the solution for that. They enable you to quickly, super easily, but also context relevantly, I don't think that's a
good word.
Help make your website appealing and good on every international place you want it to be.
So we will say mercy buckets to Weglot for helping us out.
Took a moment there. I got there in the end. Thank you very much to Weglot, a phenomenal company. If you want to go international, go check them out.
Très bien.
So we'll come into the podcast, assume that we've said lovely things about you. We will say lovely things about you
because you're ace.
You can also say
amazing.
some very average and mediocre things.
Okay, well, all right. Let's assume we've said mediocre things.
Okay, good. Keep me grounded. Yeah.
So then we'll just go straight into our quickfire.
Okay.
Or as you rightly pointed out, because you listen. Which, by the way, podcast guest hygiene, freaking amazing.
Oh,
Good for you.
Yeah.
And so in the quickfire round, the first question is, if you are starting your marketing career today, what skill would you be looking to cultivate for yourself?
It's a great question. And obviously I have listened to a lot of the episodes and agree that AI is really critical. Yeah. So that's almost like a hygiene factor now. Like you have to have AI. And if you're coming into the industry and you're not sort of an early adopter, then you're doing yourself a disservice. But taking that to the side, I think the number one skill, in particular in a junior role or starting in marketing, is around compassion and being able to communicate effectively. So compassion in that in a group environment and in a team, understanding that we're all human and that we're all fallible, and that even your CEO or your CMO or your manager will have days where they don't always get it right. And I have certainly experienced, and I know even in myself in my early career, I held everybody to such a high standard that when they hit a wobble, it was almost like I couldn't give them the grace of forgiveness. So I think that's really important, because you'll want to have it back to yourself too. So compassion. And then effective communication, especially in this world where there's a lot of hybrid working and there's a lot of automated communication, like the ability to get your point across, to seek understanding and like communicate in a way to say, I need more help, or I need more information, or what do you really mean? And then listening really powerfully. I think if you're a junior entering your career and you can be known to communicate effectively, you'll just be given more opportunities. You'll be called upon to do this. You'll know that if you get asked to do a little stretch project, that you'll do it better because you've really had that groundwork of understanding.
That's an awesome answer.
This is the most Bronwen answer in the world. I just know that's going to make this amazing. I love it. I'm like, I can't wait for this next 40 minutes to happen. That's
Which is why we got you on. We're gonna do really well, and we're gonna go straight into the second question.
Okay.
I want to ask more questions around that, but we're gonna keep it quick.
We're going back to quickfire.
Yes,
Medium fire.
100%.
discipline.
Behavior traits that you admire in others. Go.
I know it's also been said before, but curiosity. Again, because I think back to the start of my career, and I struggled with feeling like I needed to know everything. And it was actually only in the back half of probably my manager years where I learned that my curiosity was actually my greatest strength. And it wasn't that sort of, I know the answer, or I'll make up the answer. Or, it was learning that it's okay to not know and to ask questions. And I think it's like being curious about the practice of marketing, being curious about the product or the service you're selling, like really understanding that, being obsessed over your customer and your target customer and insights and what drives them, about behavioral economics. You guys had a great podcast about that recently, about really understanding what nudges drive behavior and kind of trying to understand that. So I think curiosity is just the most important trait, and something that I certainly try to cultivate in my everyday life.
Of that. And I think what's interesting, even across those two answers that you've given so far, is like, you spoke in the first answer about a compassion for others, sort of understanding that if they're not doing the thing perfectly, that's okay to a certain extent, and, sort of taking them on that journey. It's really interesting, that second answer there, that yes, you said curiosity, but actually you framed the example at the beginning about having compassion for yourself and sort of saying, I don't know this right now, and sort of being able to sort of be compassionate and sort of, rather than sort of fake it, sort of go, cool, I'm not going to beat myself up for this. I'm actually going to do the positive behavior, which is the other side of that, which is, I don't know, it's really interesting to hear the consistency across answers.
Yeah.
But I just love that you've shown the example of compassion to yourself as well, because I think that's really, really important.
Well, and it takes a lot of confidence to do it. And I think so often, again, reflecting on the first part of my career, but also seeing people, and when I see people struggling, it's so often coming down to sort of an internal battle with their ego of like needy and not having the confidence to not know, or not having the confidence to know that you've messed up and that you can move past it. And I think that's what's so critical, is like the more we can cultivate in the next generation that it's okay, like have the confidence in yourself that you'll figure it out. Have the confidence in your leaders that they're going to be there to support you. But if you get, like, you've got to stop getting in your own way. And that certainly was a big lesson for me, and something I still see in traits with people. And it's just like, get out of your own way. It's okay.
Yeah.
You're going to be
see
okay.
it all the time with so we're running lots of mentorship groups, and they're like peer mentorship groups, 6 people in, all doing the same job. There was a marketing manager's one earlier this week that we're running with Sarah, who's behind the camera, and it is like, confidence is the word, and you're sitting there like, what you're doing. Like, but it is that thing that just limits people sometimes, because the fear of what happens if something doesn't work. And I'm like, but of course stuff isn't going to work. Like, that's part of your job, is the test and learn sort of approach. But to have that, to build that confidence, sometimes just takes experience.
Yeah. And sometimes it takes a great boss Just saying like, it's okay.
Yeah,
we've
that's
got
probably
this.
more important, actually.
Yeah, and it's like, I think where the ego part comes into and the confidence is like knowing that it isn't all about you. Like that was such a big unlearning early in my career as like a reformed perfectionist and third child, and I have and a millennial. Like I've literally all the traits of like a terrible person. So I've had to unlearn a lot of that. But like, you know, making sure that I wasn't sabotaging and making sure that it wasn't all just about me, because it was that thing of like, I would hold projects close to my chest because I thought it would make me look good if I did it by myself. And actually I realized the hard way that it didn't make me look good, and that actually the project was less successful because I hadn't brought other people on the journey. And like learning the confidence of being like, actually, you know what? I don't need this to be about me for me to feel effective. And then like going, who else do I need to enroll? Whose opinion do I need to ask or guidance do I need to ask for? And then holy heck, look at the project and the outcome is so much better than I ever could have imagined it to be.
That it's definitely like mirrored from the interview we did with Jess Cabarrus, was the CMO of Asana, and she said it spoke to a no heroes mentality.
Yeah, loved that.
You know, that was like very much mirrored, but it's hard to sort of do that because you want to show up, you want to show off, to a certain extent, and be noticed. So
totally.
Discipline was the word. So let's do question number 3. So number 3 is who would be your dream mentor and why?
I struggled with this because I have so many people that I could list off. From like a business point of view, I think Angela Ahrendts. She's the former CEO of Burberry, and she was the CEO when I was at Burberry way back in the day. Yes. And she sort of led the digital revolution together with Christopher Bailey that really rebranded Burberry back in the early noughties. And she's since gone on to leadership positions at Apple and she's moved back to the States. And she has this, I mean, I'm Canadian, she's from the Midwest in the States, but I think Canadian and Midwestern mentality and philosophy of just like roll your sleeves up, be kind and get shit done really resonates with me. And she's obviously a trailblazing woman, but seems to really balance like strength and conviction with compassion and empathy. So
I love that. I've just had an idea that later when we get Bronwen on for a second part, we should be trying to get all of our guests matched with their dream mentor.
That would be cool
for future episodes.
That would be cool.
Like, we should do that. We should do that thing.
All right, noted. Is there a lesson that you've been taught over the years that is like your biggest takeaway from a mentor? And it might be in an early role, it might be in a more recent one, but what's the sort of biggest one that you can take away?
I think the biggest lesson that I go back to time and time again, and won't be a surprise based on what I've said, is somebody teaching me to allow others to contribute to your success. Just, again, when I was in early years and a manager and keen to like forge my own path and get myself known, I was in big organizations at the time as well, and I've come to smaller ones, but there was so much of like me needing to be the why this thing was successful and me needing to feel special. Yeah. It was that thing of like, I'm better than and I'm special and aren't they lucky to have me? And actually it was only through like really brutal, harsh failure that I learned if I don't allow other people to contribute to my success and invite people in, I'm never going to get to that pinnacle that I'm kind of imagining for myself. And it's only through that like journey of decentering myself and really learning about listening and really also learning about what excellence looks like. Because I think excellence has been modeled to us as like individual. And I think we're seeing that in the world right now of this like putting on the pedestal of individuals. And actually, I really believe success is more collective. And again, the wonderful lady from Asana was talking about like the rising tide lifts all ships, like that mentality. I'd way rather be on a tide that is high than a tsunami wave.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I want to just follow up on this quickly because immediately my thoughts when you started speaking about all this sort of went to like the people you're working with day to day and the rest of the team. But I think one of the things that so many people struggle with in marketing roles, and we speak about it almost ad nauseum, but I think it's so important that I don't care, is like other people in the team outside of marketing, you know, the finance team, the CEO, HR, whatever it may be. I'm curious whether there are any words or experiences that sort of stick with you in terms of that sort of stuff, because you're speaking to getting other people involved, joint success, etc. I think the danger could be people just focus on the marketing team.
Oh, totally. And like, if you're a marketer, you've got to have best friends in finance and in product. Like my experience is in apparel. Like, we're spending a ton of time with the product team and understanding why did they design this and what are they excited about. But also then when you're coming and creating a campaign, bringing it to them and being like, what do you think? What could make it better? Are you happy with how this is going? Because and I think it actually all comes back to community marketing. And community marketing, in my mind, is about scaling a business one relationship at a time. And that has to start internally first. If you don't have a strong workplace environment, if you don't have advocates for your brand within all departments, it doesn't matter how many people you go out and pay to flog your stuff on TikTok. The community marketing is never actually going to scale. And so you've got to get everybody in finance and business ops and HR and product and tech and in your DCs and all of that. They're the ones that you've got to build advocacy with first. And from there, that's where it spreads.
I love that. And I don't mean to go too deep on this subject, but I'm just really curious, like, because in my head these days I've been sort of speaking about it being half the job as a marketer to do internal then external. Like,
Yeah.
How, if you were to put a percentage on it, like, I mean, how much time do you spend internal versus external in your day-to-day?
I mean, in my day-to-day now, I'm almost entirely internal.
Right.
Because so much of what my job is about creating the conditions for the team to thrive and moving around and advocating and problem solving and clearing the path. And I think, yes, especially when I was in like marketing manager and brand manager role, it would definitely be a bit more 50-50. But yeah, it is just that constant going around and asking, does everybody have what they need? Is everyone clear on what we're trying to achieve here? And then bringing it out to the world. Because if you're not clear internally, your customer isn't going to understand.
Yeah, it feels like that's I think when you're kind of earlier on in your career, you're thinking, what do I need to learn about from a either strategy or a technical point of view? And there's not many like organizations out there that provide education for like internal marketing, but like all the problems that we're like in all the, again, going back to those mentorship groups, almost all of them, nobody's going, oh, how do I improve like my SEO or GEO ranking? Like, no one's coming to get advice or sort of shared experience on that. They're all like, I've got, a stakeholder who doesn't believe in X. How do I, or like our sales team are pushing against us because they just want to sell and not build relationship. It's all the kind of like, how do you build this internal marketing function? There needs to be more of that.
Totally.
But it's interesting that you spend like almost all of your time as a leader, like doing the internal thing. I think it's something for people to really take note of.
Well, and I think it was to the first question. Yes, obviously AI, but like that's why it's the compassion and effective communication, because it is exactly that. Is that if you don't have those skills as your backbone, you're never going to be able to advocate for yourself or your work or your budget. And then if you can't advocate for that, you're not going to be able to be effective in front of consumers either.
Yeah, definitely.
Thank you, Bronwen.
We've done quick. We've slowed down.
Yeah, let's do quick again.
Quick again. I'm committed. I'll prevent my sidebars.
No, this is not your sidebar. Let's be clear. Like, you are very
solely
much
responsible.
Like, yeah. Curiosity. We're following curiosity. So number 5, what is one piece of marketing advice that you wish that you'd had earlier in your career?
I think it's about not trying to be all things to all people. And it can be so easy, especially if you're in a business that's looking for growth, is to just go, well, am I allowed to swear?
Of course you can.
Okay, well, fuck the target audience. Like, let's just go for everyone. Sorry, Mom. But it's so easy to be like, okay, we have to scale. We just need to bring in way more consumers and way more customers. And so we're going to become a bit more generic, or we're going to go after that category and just go wild. And actually, that's I think the problem with that is that inevitable decline will often be disguised as growth in the first few months or even the first year, because it can work for a little bit, because you're still riding the coattails of your earlier success. Your existing customers are still with you. They haven't quite noticed that you've lost your soul and sort of become bland. And then very quickly you notice you have to start paying more to acquire customers because you don't stand out and you don't really mean anything. And then your repeat falls off a cliff because you've become so unmemorable.
Yeah.
What's the word?
Let's go immemorable.
Immemorable.
We're taking
So
it.
word of the year.
Forget you've become so forgettable that they bought from you, but they don't remember who you were, and so they go to buy again, and they go to another brand because that brand has paid more on PPC or whatever. So it is such an easy, especially with somebody when dealing with stakeholders who may not understand brand or marketing, it can be such an easy knee-jerk reaction of we need growth, let's go broad. But it is just a very quick way to kill a brand and kill a business.
I love that, and I'm going to do the discipline thing and not go too deep on this, but like I would encourage anyone just to look at the quality of your work and from Finisterre as a case study in doing exactly that, because you see it writ large, you know, in terms of not just your words but your actions and everything associated with it. If there is a brand who is doing that stuff, then it's the work that you do, you know, and so it's you know, stop the recording now, go check the website, go check the socials and just see it, because like, you know, that's the work, you know, and these aren't just words, that's properly followed through.
I often think that with your emails. So I've got some Finisterre stuff and it's like really, really good quality, but I actually find myself, it's kind of the art direction in it as well. I'm like, you're even when you're selling clothes on an email saying here's a new range, it's the imagery and the sort of storytelling of being around the sea that kind of takes me away a little bit. I'm like, oh, this is really beautiful stuff. You can just consume the beautiful images, and when you're ready to buy, you're ready to buy, kind of thing. It's really good. So yeah,
Music to my ears. The team do an incredible job.
they do. They're very talented.
Certainly. So that was Quickfire.
You
I think we did quite well.
We did good.
Smashed it.
Yeah.
Good.
I mean, as much as anything else, great answers.
Oh. But like, I think that didn't take too long, did it?
No.
Yeah, we're totally nailing it.
Let's hope the listener is nodding along, going, no, well done, Bronwen.
Don't think anybody's ever doing that on our podcast. Come on, guys.
Maybe they are. Who knows? So in the middle section of CMO Mentor, what we do is deep dive into something which is closer to people's hearts, still in a mentorship capacity, but definitely going deeper onto a specialist area. And so for you, you've been an advocate of purpose in a very meaningful way for quite a long time. You did a fabulous talk last year at MadFest called Purpose 2.0, and there was a provocative title as well as part of that, which was just so good. And so that's where we're going to spend a little bit of time now, sort of speaking about purpose and how that relates to marketing. And I've been thinking about this a lot because it's such a hard topic, and I think you speak to it as eloquently as anyone else, and I mean that seriously. But I'm going to place you in the mentorship position, and you're speaking to a marketer, and they come to you and they say, I'm in my job, I'm a marketer, it's providing me a stable income, but the company I work for, I'm quite a purpose-led individual, but the company that I'm part of isn't really doing that, it's not really ticking that box. And the reason why I mentioned the stable income thing is like there's a practicality here to, you know, mortgages, etc. If you're speaking to a marketer in that position and, you know, they're trying to navigate that situation, what would you be telling them and sort of taking them on a journey of?
I'm lucky enough to actually have this question posed a lot because we're incredibly lucky at Finisterre and that lots of people want to come and work for us because of our positioning. And I mean, that in itself is a growth hack that you attract incredible talent. But if there isn't a job at a business that is more purpose driven available to you, and if you're, you know, for so many good reasons wanting to stay where you are, I always just suggest like start off in your own world. So first of all, start off in your own personal world. Like, where can you bring more purpose in? Are you voting? Like, we have got a shockingly poor voter turnout in the UK. And so show up and vote in your local elections, vote in your municipal elections, vote in your federal elections, that go all the way through. Protest. You know, there's always a great thing to protest, like, and show up, because those rights are being stripped away from us in a terrifying fashion right now. So like, even if it's something that you're not necessarily an expert in, but you know other people are showing up, show up to support them and to be curious and to learn more. So cycle to work. If it's environmental, so sort your own self out first, because that you'll be just amazed at just how much better you feel if your own home life is sort of slightly more purpose driven. And then just start small at work. Like, can you advocate for speaking to your facilities manager about changing the energy provider and get it over to one of the more sustainable energies? Can you create a little employee advocacy group for either your social justice issue or an environmental issue? If there's employee surveys, say that this matters to you, because I know now at the level I'm at, we do surveys a lot and we get them and we spend a lot of time talking about what really matters to people. And if they're not saying that it's important, something else will be important. And so we'll be focusing our energy there. And then within your actual work, where can you make impact, especially in marketing? How can you be, I think photo shoots are such a big impact or have such a big environmental impact for most brands. How can you shoot in a way that has a lesser impact? You can shoot more locally, hire local people. Like, don't just fly halfway across the world with an entire shoot team and sort of exploit a local environment and then leave. Our philosophy is we'll take half of a crew and then we always hire the other half locally, because we want to have, we believe that environmental justice is linked up with social justice, and you have to be able to be employing people in different environments. So look for those small things whilst continuing to advocate, and just be like, make your boss and your boss's boss know that this is important, and then follow the brands that you think are doing a great job. And as and when the right opportunity comes, maybe you'll be able to jump to it. But we're never going to change the world if we aren't changing these big organizations, and the impact that they can have is far greater than the impact a small brand can have. So again, if you're in one of these big multinationals, if all the sort of good people leave, then those multinationals aren't going to cease to exist. They'll just be run by people who don't care about environmental and social justice. And I think that would truly be tragic.
There's, I feel like, was it kind of 2018, there was this like boom in like purpose. Everyone's like, oh, we need to have a purpose. Quick, let's talk about it. Where do you feel marketers kind of went wrong there? Because it went from something that people are like, oh, this is a cool thing to be part of and to think about, and then it seemed to kind of turn into maybe more of a tactical thing that wasn't necessarily part of the roots of the company. It was more of a marketing play. Where do you think marketers went wrong in that sort of boom?
Well, I think one just quick point of clarification, because sometimes this is an argument I see on LinkedIn. Every brand's purpose is to generate value and to generate shareholder or stakeholder value. Like, again, we were talking about, we live in a capitalist society, potentially late stage capitalism. If we work for a for-profit business, the intention of that business is to drive, or the purpose of that business is to drive value. So lots of people try to undermine the purpose conversation by just saying, oh, your job is just to drive profit. That's the only purpose. And it's like, of course, that's the ultimate purpose. Yeah. But for brand purpose, what we really mean is that the reason the company exists goes beyond that transaction and sort of that generation of value, if you will. 2018, it's funny. When I first started talking about this with my team, I realized most of them did not live through 2018 as a marketer. And they were like, yeah, I was like, oh, you have a Pepsi ad. And they're like, what? I was like, oh, wow. Okay. That's nice. That's great. It made me feel good. So 2018, for those of you who did not live through it professionally, was like, this boom year. You had, I think 16 of the 21 Cannes Lion winners were for purpose-based campaigns.
Oh, that's interesting.
It was brand purpose was declared word of the year. A whole bunch of advertising awards created purpose categories. You had the CEO of Unilever declaring that every single brand within the portfolio was going to have a brand purpose, and that was going to unlock future growth. And this wasn't happening in a vacuum, because at the same time we had the rise of Me Too, we had the eventual rise of Black Lives Matter, which then also sort of really peaked in 2020. So it wasn't happening for no reason. And like, I believe at the beginning it was really well-intentioned, but it was actually that Unilever comment, which was, for me, is that watershed moment where the second they took brand purpose as a profit driver,
Yeah.
that was where it went wrong. Because that was when you started, also boardrooms then started expecting if the purpose needs to drive profit.
Yeah.
And the thing is with purpose isn't purpose unless it costs you something. So it's like the fact that you have it there to drive profit goes against what it's actually there to do.
Yeah.
And so what we started seeing was this, for me, that the real moment was this Pepsi ad, which was like everybody, I think it was 2020, protests everywhere, or 2019. And Pepsi put out an ad with Kendall Jenner and they were like at a protest, and there was a guy with like a blue cello. I don't know why he had a cello, but it was Pepsi blue, and he like looked at the people marching in the streets with really obscure signs that said like peace and love, and he was like, I've got to take to the streets with my cello. So he went out and he went to a rooftop and started playing the cello, and then Kendall Jenner was there, and then oh no, some like people that were in a position of authority, possibly cops, but that was definitely too far, but like somebody who looked like two sides, they met and it looked like it was going to kick off, but Kendall offered him a Pepsi and all was well in the world. And it was just so misguided, so wrong on every level. And for me, that was the moment that like purpose died, because it was suddenly like, hey, you missed what this is about. And this idea that it is there to drive profit was for me, the kind of death toll of where brand purpose 1.0 went completely wrong. And also I think where it started going wrong too was these brands were putting out these big purposeful impactful marketing campaigns and saying what they believed in, but they weren't actually taking care of their households. So they weren't paying their people properly. Yep. They had, gender pay gaps. They had institutionalized racism. They had terrible environmental records. And you're like, well, hang on. If you're out here sort of preaching this, and it was very much like a holier than thou and sort of putting themselves on a pedestal, and yet they weren't even like doing the work. Yeah. And I think that was where it also started to stink, and customers could smell it, be like, there's some rot here.
Yeah.
It was a wild ad.
It was, yeah. and then what you saw, because that sort of then dove off, what it then gave birth to, because I think where Purpose 1.0 went wrong too, was it created this us versus them mentality. Totally. And it was all about like making people feel wrong, making people feel bad. Yeah. And then those people rose up. And I don't think it's sort of an over-exaggeration to say that the mega movement and the manosphere and the sort of climate denial that we're seeing is a direct response to that population feeling as though they were being alienated and attacked by this purpose-driven marketing that was coming before.
100%. It's probably no surprise to people that I'm more left-leaning. I know. And, I remember the fear myself, for someone who's sympathetic to the causes, not being able to say, just be careful about the right language in the right way to be able to do whatever, and that's someone who's sympathetic and wanting to try and get it right.
Yeah.
I can only imagine if that went opposite to your value set that you were raised with or whatever, it would have been a lot.
Yeah.
And so,
no wonder you were then drawn to the echo chamber where everyone was telling you were right and you were okay and you didn't need to change. Absolutely. Because you dipped a toe over there and they were shouting at you.
I know.
So, yeah, it went wrong.
I feel like we obviously, like we come into these sessions and we plan questions and like, I think a lot of the questions that we sort of come into this question is, how do you balance purpose and commercial stuff? And actually I feel like that's kind of the wrong answer, the wrong question based on what we've been speaking about so far. It's not about finding a balance, it's about doing purpose and it's about doing commercial. That being said, I'm aware of the context that we come into this conversation as well, which is like, for a less dramatic, want of a less dramatic statement, the world feels like it's on fire over there, and companies are scrabbling to survive and all those things. And what we've said in this conversation is the purpose of purpose isn't profit necessarily. That's where it's gone wrong historically. Inevitably, what happens when companies start struggling is they'll look to their commercial outcomes first and foremost, which is fair. And that'll be the pressure that a lot of our folks will be under today. So I'm curious about how you start to bring sort of a version of Purpose 2.0, to the table in a situation where people are like, commercial stuff right now is gnarly. You know, how do we even begin to have these conversations again in a way which isn't looking to shame people, but is about having a responsibility as a human that happens to be a marketer?
I think one of the biggest things, mindset shifts, I think the entire world needs to, and especially the business world, is looking more long term. And one of the questions that I think not enough business leaders are asking is like, what is our long-term climate change strategy? Like, how are we going to handle if the Earth's temperature gets to increases by 2 degrees? Like that, and just for the like that will be catastrophic. And we're well on our path towards that. Like even the changes we're making now, we will be lucky if we stop at 2 degrees. And all of our quality of life is going to be heavily impacted. Our supply chains are going to be impacted. Our ability to generate jobs, our ability to feed our families and our communities, to have clean water. Like it really is a big both question and problem for how humans are going to survive. Because, you know, also this thing of like, oh, save the planet. You're not saving the planet. Planet's going to be fine. Us, we're the ones that we're trying to save. Like that, like, let's be real. That's what it is. And even there'll probably be some animals that adapt and thrive. I don't think we're very fast adapters. We're pretty vulnerable, actually, if it comes down to it. And so there's like the bigger question of genuinely, what are we doing to make sure that the world and society still exists in the way that we want it to in order to exist as humans? And then it's like, how do you create a business that's going to operate within that? And if you're really short term, it can be really easy to cut anything that's purpose driven, because sometimes, you know, there's genuine budget lines set against it. You'll be like, okay, well, like even what we've seen in the last 2 years, I'm going to cut DE&I. That's easy. I'm going to move my supplier, like move my supply chain, or I'm going to stop doing so many spot checks. I'm going to ship in a different way because that costs us less, even if it has a worse impact. And I think that's really bad for business, because it is just going to come back. It's a bit like the long and the short of it. It's so easy to cut brand spend, but what you're going to notice in 6 months is your bottom of the funnel becomes twice as expensive. And so having the leadership and understanding and knowledge of the power of long-term planning and vision. Then it's also recognizing that, for me, one of the biggest competitive advantages that a modern business has is its people. And people are motivated, you know, universal human truth, man's search for meaning. Like, we want to do purposeful work. And if you've ever been at a business that in particular tried to start doing good things and then they roll them back, the impact on morale is so vast and so quick that the economic like upside of it is completely categorically false. Like it may make your EBITDA look better for a hot minute, and then suddenly it stops and you become less efficient, and you have super high recruitment costs and turnover, and you have reputational risks because people are making complaints about you as a brand, and, you know, outing some of your immoral practices into the public sphere. So it's like there's real cost from backpedaling it. And I think, you know, B Corp businesses, which, for the record, wouldn't it be great if every single business on the world was a B Corp business? If they had to, because it's hard work, imagine. But it's also like not perfect. But if that was just the standard for starting a new business in the UK, was that you had to be B Corp, I mean, I think that would certainly fill me with joy. But B Corps are outperforming the business, or they're outperforming the market. So even though I'm really passionate in saying that B Corp and purpose isn't a sort of marketing initiative, the fact is consumers are voting with their wallets, and they are making their desires known. And I do think you attract better people. You attract customers who also may be slightly more willing to spend money on, you know, a product that is better, higher quality and better made. So I get it. I've been in those rooms where that tension exists. I do also think that if you're sort of shopping around for a job at the moment, and especially if it's a more purpose-driven brand, and if the board or the leadership don't get it, like that's a major red flag. We are so lucky at Finisterre that our board do not question the purpose side of the business, and it's why they're on our board. It's what they get so excited about. And so It's never a question of what we're going to sacrifice in order to drive bottom line. It's always more about, well, how can we double down on this? How can we use this to be an even more attractive brand and attract better customers and better talent in as well?
You know, we're going through the process at the moment of hiring, which has been fabulous. And without meaning to be at all self-congratulatory, but certainly just to observe, it's been interesting in the application forms that people have noted around TMM generally trying to do a good thing being a reason why they wanted to come and join.
Yeah.
You know, which was, you know, a compliment, of course, but like as just a proof point of, you know, part of your argument there. You know, we're seeing great people apply, and they're specifically and explicitly mentioning the brand, you know, and the branding and that being a reason why they want to join, which is fabulous, you know. So
I think a lot of it is. So I've written down, and I'm probably going to fudge the sort of purpose line for Finisterre here, but inspiring the brave to save the sea is the kind of line that I've probably seen the most, and helping people get a deeper connection with the sea in order to save it in that sense. That feels like it feels long term, like you said, but B, it's quite a simple thing to for folks to get their heads round, both from an internal point of view. They're like, cool, is this aligning with our purpose and our vision? But also from an external point of view, customers get what you stand for. If you were mentoring somebody in a role who was trying to define that purpose thing, and they found that perhaps the words that they were using were a little bit vague, how would you mentor them into sort of guiding them into something that helps with both the marketing decisions but also the commercial decisions? Because I think there are a few brands out there that have got like lines that maybe kind of mean nothing and don't help guide the business.
Yeah, great question. And so ours is to inspire a deeper connection to the sea. And I think, you know, there was a moment where it was to inspire the brave to save the sea, but actually we did some work and we were like, we're not in the business of saving the sea. Like that's the reality is that
so it's moved.
Yeah. It has been redefined, although it's sort of that purpose of inspiring a deeper connection to the sea has kind of been the purpose from day one. Yeah. And then the brand's 23 years old now, so it's gone through iterations. And there was a few years where it was more inspire the brave to save the sea. But the problem with that is we're a for-profit business operating, and we have an impact. And the challenge, I think the secret with having a purpose that is actually practical and that creates a behavior change, because that's really what the purpose should do, is that it should create a behavior change or help you make decisions. And if it doesn't, then to your point, it's vague and it's just meaningless words on the wall. But it also has to be based in the reality of what you can actually do. So we have a theory of change behind ours, which theory of change, for anyone who doesn't know, is sort of it's a tool used often in impact work around what is the change we want to see, what is our hypothesis between the work we can do, and then what are the inputs and impacts that we're going to have to see whether or not we're actually achieving this. And so our theory of change is that the ocean is a critical part of the climate solution. Not enough people care about her. Lots of people can want to plant a tree because they can see it in their own backyard. But for the ocean, I mean, we're lucky in the UK that we're an island nation and we have such incredible coastline. But even then, the majority of the population lives away from the coastline. And then you get to continental Europe, you get to the United States and Canada, and the vast majority of people actually don't have a relationship with the sea. And there's geographical barriers, there's religious barriers, there's financial barriers, cultural barriers, so many barriers of why people may not have a relationship with the sea and therefore aren't advocating for her and fighting for her. So if we can exist to help people have this deeper relationship, which we know is transformative, then we believe more people will fight to save her, and then therefore we think we'll have a positive impact on the planet. It's very important, though, that we are not saying that we as a business we're not going to save the sea, because it's too ambitious, and we'd never produce any product ever again. Like we'd cease to exist very quickly. But instead, if we can produce product that allows and enables people to be by the sea, keeping them warm and dry, natural rubber wetsuits so they can get into the sea, PFAS-free rain jackets so that, the UK has been quite rainy recently. So we've been selling a lot of rain jackets.
Rain jacket sales through
the roof. And so, but then the more time they're spending time in nature, they're like, actually, nature is really powerful and really important. I'm going to advocate to save it.
Yeah.
So I think it has to answer the question, if you're in a place where you're defining a purpose or redefining your purpose, it has to be authentic to why you exist as a business. So if you're a service provider or if you have a manufacturing base, like, why are you actually making that product? And then what's the problem you're seeking to solve? So like Tony's is such a great example too, of like, they make incredible chocolate, but they saw that there was a problem within the supply chain around chocolate. And so they're not out to like save the world. They're out to eradicate slavery from the chocolate supply chain. Yeah. And they're really clear that that's the problem that they've chosen to solve. That doesn't mean the chocolate supply chain is going to be perfect, but that's where they can authentically have an impact. And we know they've got a really strong theory of change behind it that drives their behavior, but still allows them to exist as a business.
Yeah, and that purpose piece with the Tony specifically, I know from my own experience, like I pretty much only buy Tony's dark with sea salt, whatever it is, the green. Oh, it's so good. But it's not just because the product's good, because there's loads of good dark chocolates out there.
Yeah.
But I find myself being drawn to it because I'm like, oh, do you know what? Like, I'm not going to look at price on this because this is a treat.
Yeah.
And therefore I have the sort of agency within me to make that decision. And that makes me feel good in a very, very small way. So it's proof that purpose does like not only impact how the business is run, but it does affect commercial outcomes, because I've made a decision to not buy Lindt or whatever is next to it. Other brands are available, but I've gone with Tony's. So yeah, they're a great brand as an example.
And I think it's good for business that the world is getting better for everyone. Like, I think there's sometimes this like extractive mentality around wealth and value generation of like, it has to cost people something and so that I can take it. And actually, like, I'd really challenge that mentality of like, the more people who are living better lives, who are generating value and getting education and, living longer, happier, healthier lives, like the better businesses are going to perform. Totally. And I think that sometimes doesn't quite land. And I'd like to challenge that guiding philosophy.
Absolutely. No, you're so right. We all win if we all win.
Yeah. It's not it's not like just a piece of a pie that everyone's trying to steal from each other.
Absolutely. Last question on deep dive, and to a certain extent it relates to one of your quickfire answers as well, because you mentioned confidence as part of that and your own journey of confidence. And with a lot of this conversation, one way or another, we're asking people to express a view. And expressing a view, particularly if you're earlier in your career, where you're in a room with, hippos, highest paid persons in the room or whatever. I forget. That didn't work.
Highest paid person's opinion
nice.
Is a hippo.
Ah.
Okay. So you kind of go, here's a great idea. And then the hippo goes,
no.
Yeah, but I'm paid the most, so we're doing this.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So you find yourself in a room with hippos, but you too hold views and either from a marketing perspective or an internal perspective. In expressing strong views, one can be fearful of both alienating other people or sort of having backlash for your strong opinions that you hold. I wondered if in this mentorship capacity that we've sort of asked you to walk in today, how would you take someone through that journey of sort of being okay with expressing themselves on whichever view they may have? I mean, specifically related to purpose in this instance, but I'm curious on that journey, because you mentioned confidence earlier as well.
And I've gotten this wrong so many times, especially like even with family and friends, where I'm like, you should feel guilty about who you are as a person. And like my dad in particular. Boomer dad does not take well to me telling him all the problems of the world rest on his shoulders. So I've learned that is no longer effective. Yeah. And I think that ultimately comes down to it is like, what do you actually want?
Yeah.
Like if you just want to shout your opinion at somebody, great, it's not going to land.
Yeah.
But if you actually want a change, if you want a initiative to be invested in, or you want people to back an idea, you have to think through the psychology of how you're going to convince them. So first of all, like especially if it's something around perhaps social justice or environmental justice, like get to know the enemy or not the enemy, not that the hippos are, but like get to know them and where they stand and be curious and ask them, what is your stance on this? Because it's only by understanding them better that you can then create the arguments that might hit those concerns head on. So, understand it's probably not that they're against social justice. They're just worried that, they're going to get shouted at on LinkedIn or their neighbor is going to throw an egg at their house or something. So like seek to understand where they're coming from and then meet them where they're at and acknowledge that. I think that's the other thing too, is like acknowledge that this might feel nervous or scary, but here's XYZ parameters that I've put in place to help us deal with anything that comes our way. And like do the work and prepare, but also it doesn't always have to be big. And I think I'd really encourage a lot of people, especially at the manager level, to like start with those smaller changes. So maybe the first thing you want to do, like maybe you want to save the world or make the world better for women or make the world better for your trans colleagues or something. But like start by just like, is there equality across your team? Is there somebody who does feel a bit left out? Is there a way that you can bring them on board? Again, speak to facilities managers of like, can we degender the toilets? Like that doesn't feel like a big deal. Is that something that we could do? Like you don't have to necessarily put out a campaign with your position on the trans argument or the environmental position of a business, but like just look for those smaller things where you can slowly change the world versus having to go out and hit it head on, especially if you're in an environment where you do think there's going to be nervousness and pushback.
Yeah.
And then once you've built that confidence, you can then cite that. You can say, we did this and this was the positive impact. We've surveyed our employees and this is the thing that matters most. There's one of the things we do in B Corp is a materiality assessment. And it's a huge piece of research where you interview all your stakeholders. So it sort of starts with your team, employees, suppliers, vendors, customers, board members, shareholders. You can choose how wide you go and you ask them to rate what are the areas of impact that you believe we can be most effective in and that matter most to you. And you put it, sorry, I keep hitting the microphone. You put it on a grid and you plot it. And we've done that a lot to deal with, well, where can we, because you can't win at everything. So again, to the purpose, it's like, what are going to be the areas that we can have impact? So we did a big materiality assessment as part of our last B Corp. And what was so surprising was actually where certain issues landed and other ones didn't. And so unsurprisingly, human rights across the supply chain is the most important thing. And so now we've got the conviction to be like, right, that's where we know both our customers and the makeup of our business can have the most impact. Then there's other things like chemical use and dyeing. Our stakeholders that are outside, further away from the inside of the business, they didn't rate that as important because they don't really understand it. But we actually know internally it's something that we can do and have material impact. So those things are all in those quadrants where it's like we can have impact and be effective with a varying scale that matters. And then there was loads on the left-hand side. And sure, there's definitely a part of me that's like, but they all matter too. and actually it's like, I'm not saying they don't matter, but it's not where we can win right now. And so if you're overwhelmed with where do I start and where can we actually do this, the materiality assessment is a really powerful tool in order to get you there.
I love that. And, I don't know whether this is a build or what, but even I can just imagine someone sat there very much in the similar way to which the way you've answered there, having a top line headline, which is the thing which I care about. Even if you're just able to reel off 10 or 20 things, and just sort of say, I'll start with this one or whatever it may be.
Yeah.
That's so useful. So thank you.
I also find it really interesting that you've kind of gone full circle in this interview, and you started with like the whole internal marketing thing, but if you take the word marketing out of it, the actions that you need to take in order to lean into purpose start internally, because if you go, oh, we've got this idea of how we can, be purpose driven, and this will help us, with our marketing. But if none of the work has been done already internally, then you've got to catch up very, very quickly for that to be sort of a real authentic thing.
Totally.
It's something that there are things that we do internally at the marketing meetup that we talk about in every single board meeting, and we never talk about externally, but we know, like, we're really proud of them, and they are values driven things, but we don't go, oh, we are the community that does X, Y, and Z. We just behave in a certain way, and that's almost more important. But it is enough. Yeah, we don't
have to be a marketing thing. Not everything has to be marketing, right? Not everything has to be content.
Exactly that. We have a question from did you want to do a question from the community?
Yeah, so I'm mindful of the scenario that this will be very much a summary question, because I feel like we've covered a lot of the ground that will come from the community scenario. But
I haven't read this one because I'm disorganized. So this is from a marketing manager inside a large company. And they say, personally, I care a lot about environmental and social impact, but my organisation is cautious. Leadership is worried about political backlash and prefers to stay neutral. So I'm stuck in this tension. I want to push the brand to stand for something, but I don't want to risk my career or alienate my colleagues. This is like the perfect summary question. If I came to you for advice, how would you sort of mentor me through that situation? Where should I start? And how do I bring people along without becoming the difficult one in the room?
So true. Again, I think I would, first of all, it does depend on the company. And it does, like, if you're working in oil and gas, it's going to be pretty hard to convince them to not be in oil and gas anymore and to just replant the rainforest. So, like, there's got to be a reality check of the business you're in. So also ask yourself, like, what role will purpose play in this organization? To that point of theory of change, like, what change do they actually want to see that they believe this business can do? Maybe it is simply just, bringing pride back. I mean, I never thought I'd see the day where pride campaigns have disappeared, but they have all but disappeared. And so maybe there's a motivation for her to bring pride back, but that could just start with an internal celebration. And her making, that's weird, I've just gendered them as her. They,
Cancelled.
but they could, go and be like, okay, hang on a second, this is something that matters to employees. So again, do the work, because we all have personal biases and we all care about different things. And so what you want to do if you want to have impact is find the things that the most people care the most about and then lean in there. Because if you have a really fringe purpose area where you're like, I care about the Guatemalan spider, I don't know, like, and nobody else cares about the Guatemalan, like, you're never going to get that across the line. But if you're like, actually, I've petitioned my peers and we all believe this is an area that as a business we could have a really positive impact, both internally and externally. And here's 5 things that we believe we'd like to do on a scale of 0 risk to high risk. And, like, know that you're going to land in the middle. So put some really high risky things in there just so that they have something to say no to. And then they'll feel relief that they've landed on the middle, where meanwhile the entire time you're like, that was where I wanted them to go anyway. But I think it's also really about, like, don't make people wrong. Don't make people feel guilty. Don't make, like, this us versus them is just not getting us anywhere. And we can see it. We're living through this right now. So it's got to be sympathetic, compassionate, and recognize that it might change from your first recommendation. And it might change for good reason.
Yeah. That's lovely.
That's us. Bronwen.
Well, we did have, so I did an interview earlier in the week.
Oh, you did the thing.
I did the thing.
Great.
Not only did I remember to ask the previous guest's question, I actually asked Anna to ask the next guest's question.
Fabulous. Good.
The only problem is that I've only got a vague recollection of what she asked. But I'm pretty sure. So it was Anna Henwood, who's the CEO of Sticky League.
Introduce the section, because we know what we're speaking about.
Oh, okay. Well, fair enough. So we ask...
I'm a big fan, so I know what's coming.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we ask previous guests to ask a question to our next guest. And Anna, I'm going to paraphrase because this won't be right, but she asked basically around what your biggest mistake was. And because she thinks it helps really uncover the person. So that's the question from Anna, your biggest marketing mistake, but also we'd love a question for our next guest from you.
Biggest marketing or biggest leadership mistake?
Because I can't remember the question verbatim, you choose. You got it. Sarah's got it. What is it? She's got the transcript. Far away. What is it, Sarah? There you go. So what was your biggest mistake and what did you learn from it?
So the mistake that I still think about the most is when I re-entered the workforce following my first maternity leave. I had always been somebody who attached a lot of my own self-worth to my job and my job title and the place that I worked and the job that I did. And so I found leaving work for the first time, and like I've worked since I was 12. I think it was illegal to work at that young age, but like I was working. So I've worked my entire life, and that job has always been a big part of my identity and too much of my identity. And so I found becoming a parent and all the hardness that comes with becoming a first-time parent, I found all of that a really challenging identity journey. And so when I came back to work, the fact that there'd been somebody covering my role really triggered something deep in my, like I talk about confidence, but like my confidence was rocked because I had this idea of, well, hang on, I'm the best person for this job and I'm special. And aren't they lucky to have me back?
I mean,
and so
you are special, by the way, and we are lucky to have you.
So I basically came back and was like, I need that to make sure everybody knows that I am much better than the person who is doing my job and that they need to feel lucky that I'm back. And so I sort of, would barge into meetings, and rather than like seeking to understand, I would just give my unsolicited opinions and offer them as answers. Like, oh, this is the answer. I would like just go over the top with my team in terms of like friendliness, and I removed any boundaries that do need to exist between, manager levels. And it meant that they didn't really know what they could come to me for. And suddenly also sort of the relationship got skewed in everybody's mind. And I took that if they didn't like me because I needed to be the most popular person back, that like that was also going to be a failure and a stain. And so I just like, it was gremlin mode. Like it was poor leadership. But I was able to mask it really well. And so ironically, I was asked to lead some leadership training at the same time because they're like, oh, Bronwen's done the curriculum. She can train. So I was there and I was in a big organization. So we had a proper L&D program. So I was like there talking all about, I think it was mindful communication. And I was like, oh, and, egoless and all this. And I just felt myself as I was going through the curriculum getting really hot. And I was like, my entire body just started reacting to the ridiculousness that I was preaching and teaching this standard of leadership, but it wasn't something I was practicing. And I finished the session, God only knows how, and then went to the toilets and just burst into tears and realized that I just realized this like swirl I'd gotten into and this comparison trap and this really horrible desire to like make somebody else look bad, all because I believed that would somehow make me look good. And it was this huge unlock and the like repair that needed to take place in order for me to build back was, first of all, this healthy boundary between my worth and my job. I was like, I have to detach that. That is meaningless and that's ridiculous. So I did that. But also just really recognizing that, this desire to look good doesn't look good. And actually, it's about the team and are they happy and are they thriving? And it is something that still sticks with me. That was over a decade ago. And every single day when I show up with my team, I'm asking myself, like, how can I be the best possible leader? Who do they need me to be today? Because who they needed yesterday might be different from today based on how they are or where they're at or the problems coming up. And it's just this constant practice of like, I need to be confident and self-assured and curious so that I can create the best possible conditions for everybody to operate in. And if I don't, the cost of it is huge. So very long-winded answer.
The humility in that is just that answer alone is one of the in my opinion, like one of the best leadership lessons that anyone could take from probably that's probably one of the best leadership answers I've heard in all of the podcasts that we've done. Joe's tearing up. It's a daily practice. And I think, again, I was, for some reason, got it in my head that like leadership was a destination, and I'd get there and I'd be a leader, and then I could stop trying. I'd be like, oh yeah, I've got there now. Great, I'm a leader. And like I got a promotion, or I became a people manager. Great, I'm a leader now. I've got that done. And actually, like, it is a daily practice, and it is every single day, and the people you're dealing with, and humans, we're so like beautifully unpredictable and all over the place. And so learning to adapt how I show up, and the importance that I show up well. So it's also like taking care of myself. You know, I was a new mom struggling with balancing identity, working 5 days a week in an office in London, going home to see an infant child. Like that, I wasn't taking care of myself during that either. And so now I really prioritize, am I well? And am I well enough to be who I need to be today? And I'm totally unapologetic about that, of like that whatever it is required of me in order to show up well is sacred, and I will do it. And then making sure that I give that to my team too. To your point of Elle earlier, have you been in the ocean yet? Yeah.
Elle, if you're listening to this, go
for a swim.
Go for a swim, Elle.
It's time.
Yeah, it's time. Because it's so often in those situations where you're in a pressure cooker and things feel hard that you actually take yourself out of the equation and go, no, I've got to do this. And actually it's like, go and do the 30-minute walk, go throw yourself in the ocean, go do a Sudoku, do whatever it is that you need to do to feel well and better, and then come and tackle the problem, because it's going to be done the way you're going to move through it. Yeah. And the potential cost of you not showing up well and lashing out at people or giving feedback that isn't kind or necessary or true. Like you can have really negative legacies that you leave behind through poor leadership. And so I was just lucky enough that my team at the time, I was really honest with them once I had that breakthrough and realization, and asked for their support and understanding. And what I just feel so lucky about, and I'm still, in contact with most of them today, is just that they held me big and they created that space for me. And then they were able to go on their own journeys alongside as well.
Amazing. Bronwen, you're so freaking incredible. I want you to if you become CEO of Market Meetup one day, could you, could you be my boss? Please?
Likewise.
We should ask you the question that I don't know how to sort of hold that space and sort of acknowledge the incredibleness of that answer, and then do a callous thing like ask another question. So can we just acknowledge the incredibleness of that answer, and also acknowledge that it's shit to move on to a next question as if that didn't happen. But the last question is the question for the next person coming in. So what would you like to ask our next guest, who, by the way, will probably be John Evans from the Uncensored CMO.
Oh my God. Oh, if I'd known that. Okay. Well, I guess John, and you can tell me if this question is too off-piste.
All good.
But I suppose my genuine question is, as a business leader, and now he's a new entrepreneur, what steps is he taking today to make sure that we have a world that we can all still inhabit tomorrow? And so how is he, as creating a new business, making sure that it's a business that has a positive impact on the world around us?
That's wicked. Love that.
I'll make him squirm.
I was going to say, the beads of sweat.
But I'm a big fan of John Evans, so yeah.
But I love that as a provocation for anyone listening.
Yeah.
Because I know that even us, we could do with sitting down and answering that question for ourselves, and spending as long as it takes to just sort of ask ourselves that question, because I know that we don't do it enough. So that's wicked. What a great question. And what a fabulous, we're just blessed beyond belief that
Absolutely.
you spent time with us. You're a light in this world. So thank you very much for
Thanks, Bronwen.
Incredible.
Thank you. And likewise, I feel incredibly honored to have been invited here and to this incredible setup. Yeah. All the way from Cornwall. So
a real privilege.
Thank you.
Thank you.